talking all things theatre and events.
Since graduating, I have done things such as Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis.
I've been a professional dancer now for 18 years, and a lot of my main work is with Matthew Bourne's New Adventures.
I just enjoy plugging stuff in for a living. I can't tell you why, but I do.
The Stage Is Yours podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Stage Is Yours podcast with me, your host Cal Graham, joined as always by producer Dan, and we're talking all things theatre and events. So today we're joined by production lighting technician Jay Taylor. We talk all things theatre, the current state of the industry and how he got where he is today. We cover his work from lighting design to corporate events and much more. So enough from me, Jay Taylor, the stage is yours. Joined by Jake Taylor today. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, all right. In a very weirdly warm Edinburgh, considering it's February. It's like 12, 13 degrees today, so I'm not moaning. When a week ago we had a foot of snow.
So exactly, yeah. That is England for you, isn't it? To be fair, the UK.
Absolute standard. But grand, so let's talk a little bit about yourself. What you do, what you would do in normal times, I think is how I need to phrase that question these days.
Yes. So primarily I work as a freelance lighting technician. Anywhere and ever. I was in and around London, but also I do a resident position as a lighting designer for Dynamic Theatre, which you had Jamie on before. I don't do as much lighting design as that, but primarily it is just lighting tech work, which just entails mainly lighting installation, operation or power installation. Those are the areas I generally stay in, and that's just what I've tended to do. Really, it's just you know how it is. You do one thing and then you turn out doing something else, and you're like, how did I get here? Why, like, why do you like the job so much? I just do. I mean, I just do. I just enjoy plugging stuff in for a living. I can't tell you why, but I do.
It just does. Yeah, it's a weird one. I think a lot of people, it's where you initially aim to go and where you probably end up are never quite exactly where you thought you'd end up, but you just end up being where you enjoy, really. And yeah, it's.
That is the theatre industry or the entertainment industry, isn't it? You'll start doing one thing and then someone will ask you to do something else and you'll be like, why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
another string to my bow, really.
I like it, definitely. Grand. So in terms of that, obviously you yourself, you worked on kind of a wide variety of stuff. You even just mentioned there, from kind of theatre to sort of the joys and the world that is power and slightly more kind of electrical based in that sense. You've also done some work in kind of the corporate world, and that kind of things like that. So yeah, you've kind of worked on a wide variety of stuff. Do you kind of have an ultimate favorite? What's that kind of one bit that if you could choose to work in every day, that's where you'd end up working?
I mean, when you're in it, obviously there's question about how much money you get in, because obviously everyone talks about day rates and what that matters, but when it ultimately comes down to it, theatre's just where's my passion, really. Do you know what I mean? So and I've that's how I started, really. So when I was 14, like most everyone's stories, really, you start in a theatre, someone asks you to do something, normally in high school or college, your local drama or whatever, and that's just where I've been. That's where it came from my nan as well. My nan used to show me like cats on video, and that's where it's always been for me, really. But as it is today, I'm very much used to the corporate lifestyle of stuff, which I'll come on into in a bit about my full-time job when I worked in corporate. But that's what either corporate or theatre for me, really.
Yeah, no, I think we've all got that kind of. Everyone traces something back, and there's a Amdram group or there's a theatre that just kind of, it's just where you started. It's just where you did it because no one else wanted to, or you're just like,
you're trying not to say it, but like everyone starts doing drama in high school or something, and the aim is to be, you know, on the stage, but no one actually thinks about what happens behind, you know. And that's how realistically you get into it, because they're like, do you want to do this? And you're like, is that even a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I never ever planned. It was never coming out of school, certainly, that not knowing what to do with my life. Yeah, I didn't even know it was never talked about ever. Like, did A-level drama and all of that, and it was always just, yep, you're gonna go.
Exactly, yeah.
Drama,
Even
like,
in like with high school and stuff, it was never on the curriculum. You know, like obviously when you go to college and stuff, you can specialize, but it was only just, you know, what was on the stage. And if you were doing stuff backstage, you weren't getting a grade for it. It was you doing it after school because you enjoy doing it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to get in trouble because whenever I was doing lighting stuff for a show, all my other normal school work just didn't do it. Just was far more interested in doing the lighting and stuff, and was doing, yeah, fine, I'll go and do that during my lunch break, this and this. Yeah, I'll be at that rehearsal. Like, and all my other work just went to the side. It was like, yeah, no, not, I'm doing this. So
it does just draw you, doesn't it? It's not like I've always wanted to do this. Like it like magnetizes you to.
There's a few people who go, yeah, I want to do this, but then you find out that like probably their mum or their dad or something does it as well. So like works in that side of the industry. But yeah, a lot of people you kind of chat to and they're like, yeah, well, my mum does this and this, and have no real links to the theatre in terms of what they do. But yeah, it's a weird one how you kind of chat to a lot of people and like, yeah, I kind of fell into it. It was never the plan, but that's just kind of where it is. But so let's chat about current state of things and how the world has turned upside down, and we're now knocking on for a year. Certainly myself, a year of doing. I've done 1 day's what I could class as theatre work in the last year, and even that was just a site visit and looking at stuff, an empty room. So it's so how are things for you on that front?
I mean, obviously back in, it was March, wasn't it? When, you know, the first lockdown commenced, and you know, everyone didn't really know what the situation was happening, didn't know what's going on in the world. It was all very like strange. Stuff started dropping out the air. Text messages going from friends and stuff, being like, oh my god, I've lost this continuously. It was like a span of maybe like 2 to 3 weeks when you just get messages from your friends and colleagues being like, literally everything's gone and your whole life was falling apart. Do you know what I mean? But you know, it's been okay, because obviously you've just got to deal with what's going on, and that's the worst thing about the whole situation, you know, is you have no control over it, and the precautions put in place, i.e., you know, events and stuff to be the last thing to come back. It needs to happen, because obviously it brings such a large amount of audience together, which is, you know, the problem with the current situation. But you know, you got to crack on, man, and you got to do what you can, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's events that they've got planned, like certainly for this year, are now so well planned that it's just going to be ridiculous. Because it's certainly in the early part, I knew everything that I had in the books. Well, I had the thick end of 18 months work just drop off a cliff. So the bits I did have in, I was like, right, let's sit and they've never been so planned and detailed and things, because I had 5 months sat on furlough, just kind of going, twiddling my thumbs, waiting for something. But yeah, so I think it's impacted us all hugely, and was just, I think everyone was very frustrated in the early part of it, because you would see certain things were allowed to happen and we weren't, and you were kind of like, I don't understand how that works, but not what we do. But yeah, it was always going to be the case of first to close, last to open, unfortunately. So it's certainly been a tough old year, and I think it's of doing that. But I'm now looking at it, I'm trying to go, what are the positives to come out of all this? So I'll be, like I said, so have you got anything that you kind of go, yeah, this has actually worked out really well? Or
Yeah, quite a few really, because obviously, like I said, you've got to look at the positive side of it, and one of them is doing what you can, i.e., events and whatever, are trying to do that online side to industry. So that would be a positive. They're focusing more on that because they have to. That's the only thing they can do. So that's definitely a positive. Because that's what I see from not just people in the events industry and stuff. You see, corporate companies in offices and stuff. They see the benefits to having people at home and people on computers at the desk saving money. I mean, people are see the benefits of that sort of thing. So I see, you can. They're just spending more time and focusing on that side really, which is definitely a benefit. Another benefit is you can't help it, but you're spending time with your family, as yourself from working with everyone you've worked with since you started, is you don't really have a lot of time for yourself, let alone your friends and family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just something that comes along with the job really. It's not a bad thing, it's not the greatest thing, but because of what's happened, you do get to spend a lot more time with your friends and the family that you've been away, like what I've definitely been away from for the last 5-6 years, and been home within maybe I'll be like, Mum, I'm coming home for a day, and I haven't seen them in about 3, 4, 5 months. Do you know what I mean? Because you've been so busy.
But yeah, I think you touched on there's all the kind of virtual stuff, and there was that lovely moment in the first lockdown when kind of everyone just threw so much theatre for free online or made it accessible, which was really nice to kind of do that. And everyone went, okay, we're all kind of in this together. But obviously there's only so long that was, and I think that was when everyone was like, okay, it's going to go on for a couple of months and that'll be it. But I certainly think there's going to be some positives going forward, and that all some bits from that are going to carry on into the future. So I think you'll see a lot more of that. More shows will be streamed. There'll be more online content from companies, from things like finding a way to kind of have remote access to stuff. So like talking to companies who have been doing things online, their reach has suddenly become massive. Like they've got people from all over the world suddenly tuning in to watch stuff that normally they might have only been getting, if it's a small theatre, 200-300 people a night to see a show. So I think it's
just a way of broadening that community, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even more so than we already are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's opening up a whole kind of new world into it. And me, myself, looking into bits and pieces and going, okay, I'm going to have to learn a few new things and how it all actually works from a streaming sense. Because I think it's something that's going to come round and be a bigger thing. So for that, and ultimately lighting for camera, because joys, it's a damn sight different to lighting just for an audience. But
exactly, yeah.
So I think there's been a lot of changes, a lot of impact. We're all in a very different kind of situation. But I think if it's done one thing for me, and I don't know about yourself, but just the appreciation actually of what my job was and what I'm doing.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's the same for you in that sense.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's you don't know what you've got until it's gone, and because it was snatched away so quick. For myself, even I mean, like you said, when we met up in December, I only went freelance, plucked up the courage to do freelance when I started November. So it was literally a month after that I started to we met up with you, and then obviously March hit. So I only really had 4 months on that big scary road, and I was loving it. Do you know what I mean? Because I was like, there was a stream of 2-3 months where I literally had maybe 3 days off, but it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? This is probably going to the next section about the hobby or whatever. But you don't mind that side, and if you're going to be doing, I've always said this, if you're going to be doing if your work takes up 60-70% of your whole life, probably even more, but do you really want to spend that doing something you don't enjoy, or you don't, if you're going to be working tirelessly for days on days on days, you might as well do something you crave to do,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's another thing I realized through it all was just how much of kind of there is a social side to the industry we're in, that actually, yes, okay, you're working all the time, but the people you're working with you just have this different kind of, do all become, they're not just colleagues, they are your mates, they are your friends at the end of the day.
Exactly. There was I think you spoke with Luca, didn't you? Luca Monica, and there was actually that situation of you know when you go to work and if you're doing like a solo freelance job and you turn up, and I turned up one day, I think it was but he'll literally be laughing at this when he listens, but I turned up at the Hilton in Birmingham for a job, and I can't remember what the company was. I think it was Aztec. Just doing a freelance job, corporate. And I walk in, obviously, as you do, chains are down, truss on, and guess who's up at the top of the picker shouting, Luca by himself doing his thing. And but I hadn't seen him in a year and a half, and he's just one of those situations where I wasn't, because I was just started doing the freelance stuff. I was just building my confidence up to do it, and that just it tops it off when you see someone you haven't seen in ages, and you're essentially working with one of your best mates that you haven't seen in ages for a whole day, and that really
it's even better when it's not kind of planned and kind of do that.
Exactly.
Same. And I'd have it on when you're on tour and stuff as well, and you jump into different theatres and you bump into people that you'd met ages ago or that you'd worked with as a Kazi years ago, and you're like, and you catch up with people, and it is it's a good crack, and it's just it's what you realise that part of probably what you miss just as much as the work is the kind of the people that you're working with, and kind of the world that you end up living in, because you absolutely end up in a tiny little bubble. And it was so mad coming out of the tour bubble and ended up back home for the first time in, like I said, in sort of 6 years, back with your parents, go I appreciate kind of somewhere to stay, but at the same time you're like, this is weird, I might as well be about 15 again, kind of living back with nothing going on.
So what age did you leave when you were home? When you left home? Sorry.
When I probably ultimately properly left home was probably 23, but from the point when I was 21, it was there's a place to sleep. I was literally never there. I was out the house at 6 a.m, and then I'd get back at midnight from work and be fine, and then be back out at 6 again. So it was the first time I was back at home, and kind of my parents were aware I was at home, if you like, for the first time since in 6-7 years. So it was weird, to say the least.
Yeah, very weird, especially when you're doing, you get put in a situation where you can't do anything other than look for a new job.
But hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now is what we're hoping for a summer season. If we can get a summer season of some description in, then at least then that starts to kind of build a few things back up.
Exactly. As long as it's the only way it's going to be done if it gets eased in a certain way. Obviously, I don't know how, but I'd love for it to come back ASAP. But if we've got to come back, it's got to be done properly. And if you come back, try and bring stuff back in and start introducing reducing amounts of social distancing, blah blah blah. It's just not gonna be any good if we have to keep going back in. So I'm really hoping that when it all does go back to normal, it all goes back to normal properly.
Absolutely. So enough kind of Rona chat and stuff. Let's kind of move it forward a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about your work as a kind of lighting designer and kind of the stuff you get involved with. So let's just start off with, so as a lighting designer, kind of explain a little bit about what you do on that, kind of a little bit about your process and how you kind of, what that involves for you.
So I primarily, the only lighting design I ever do is I do resident work for Dynamic Theatre with Jamie Poxon, and have done since, getting the dates in now. When was the first Rent? You tell me.
Would have been 5 years this year. So
5 years. And then we obviously did a second Rent, and then we've had Little Shop, and then we did Oliver, and then we've got another one in the pipeline, which I'm not sure if he's mentioned, but we literally had a Zoom chat about it the other day. So, but yeah, those sort of things are going on really. I only really do work for him really, but whenever he always calls me up being like, oh, we've got a new one, and I know it's going to be a bit more complicated.
Sometimes you love those kind of jobs when someone comes at you and goes, right, I want to do something that's completely wacky, weird, and just out there, not traditional in the sense. I mean, it's nice to go to some jobs and go, yes, here's a nice little theatre,
straightforward. Yeah.
But then every now and then you're like, yeah, give me something that's
But that's the one thing is from each of these shows that we've done, obviously I can only speak with Dynamic because that's the only one I've worked with, but every single time we do a show, it's always like a step up, and it's not necessarily about being completely unique and doing something no one has ever done, because let's face it, we're not in the West End or we're not on Broadway, but as long as it's a step up for you and the company, i.e., whether that's expanding the pros, putting more set on, putting those practical elements into it, using like low fog that you've never used before, just, bringing those new elements to the audiences in your local area, and really pushing that boat out. That's all that matters. And he always comes with a new idea, whether it's like, and that is the most important thing, is bringing something new to the table every time you bring a new show ahead, because that's what people want to see, being like, wow, they've really like expanded here, and as long as you're like expanding your own creative mind, because that's just improvements day on day, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is, like I said, it's always trying to maximize what you can get out of things. Obviously, it's always going to be limitations. There's limitations with everything, no matter where you are, whether that's you're in, I mean, take one of the fringe venues that I design up here. I walk it, there's a room that I turn into a 30-seat little studio that's not much more than 5 meters by 6 meters. And you turn it into, and you put a full, and there's a PA system in there, lighting, everything, it's done, dusted, and it's like, okay, yep.
Exactly, to the millimeter.
Massive, mate, tell me about it. Every little millimeter of space in there. Do we work to millimeters at Greenside? No, absolutely not. But it's mad. But you take that tiny little thing, and then you take things that you get involved with on the other end of the scale, and whether that's some big outdoor festival or whether that's some massive touring show, you're like, there's just this theme that runs through it that you're trying to maximize everything you can get from it. And and always trying to create something that looks a little bit unique, but still it still looks clean and done well. I think that's one of the things I've always said is you can never be paid a bigger compliment as like someone who works backstage of, oh, well, I didn't notice that any of that happened. It just happened. Or, yes, you didn't have a clue that this happened, or that went tits up, and you didn't see or notice. That's grand. Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the biggest kind of compliments you can ever be paid.
To be seen, to be not seen, but the performance is heard massively.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's mad, and I've been through a trend of a lot of shows I've worked on over the last couple of years where they're kind of like, oh, we want it to quite minimalistic and we like it to be quite open and stuff. So the wing, like, sight lines can be pretty grim at times. And you're like, oh, okay, can't stand here, can't stand there, can't stand there. If I do this wrong, I get stuck. And then I'm like on stage for like the next 10, 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, like it's mad. Or if you've got a massively complicated show, Wizard of Oz at the Birmingham Rep with a revolve and the massive house on it, that rotating as fly pieces are coming in and out. So if you get the timing wrong, it's all going horribly wrong.
Exactly.
It was like, it's one of those, you always like a challenge though. Always like a challenge. So,
exactly. I mean, as long as you're, someone brings something else new in, and we've all been in those situations where everyone's like, have you done this before? And then everyone's like, yeah. And you're no, I don't think I have. So, but the amount of planning and negotiation between people and the communication that needs to be, like you said, on stage, that is absolutely crucial. And it can, if you get it wrong, it's going to be massive problems, as you know yourself. You need to have that level, that mental level already put in your head from, you know, years of doing that CASI work, doing that extra free work for your mates, that they gained all of these skills and experiences. Whereas, you know your stage directions, you know what they're talking about when they're talking about casters and stuff. When you just need to know this sort of stuff, that takes years of just going to different size venues, different styles. That you know, you can't just bring someone out off a stranger off the street to come and help and push boxes, because, you know, they need to know that those sort of things, because otherwise they'll be falling onto the front of the stage, they'll be knocking over stuff. Do you know what I mean? And that just slows stuff down. It's all time consuming. So
can you be experienced at the end of the day? Like, if you've got, like, can you, like you said, you can go and you can do a degree in this stuff, which is grand. And as someone who hasn't, it's kind of, I find it a slightly odd concept at times, because I haven't been there in that environment. I don't know kind of how it works ultimately of that. And then versus that kind of experience side. But I look at it and there's such a wide range of course offerings, and every course seems to be different. Like, you speak to everyone and they've done, oh yeah, we do this, this, and this. And then you chat to these guys and they do this, this, and this. And they come out with a degree in something similar. And you're like, title wise, but I'm like, but you've done all of this and you've done all of this. Okay. And it just, I think it's, having not been in that world, I find it slightly, I think it could be. So yeah, how did you find your university experience in that sense?
I think it was good. Yeah, I know, I completely know what you mean, because there is always that, well, why did you go to university? Because, you know, I've made it. I've made it to this point that I didn't go to uni like yourself, and you can do either or and still be in. It's all about work ethic, isn't it? All about your determination and who you meet at what time. That obviously comes into it. But regards to actually doing the degree, I found that it definitely did benefit me, but not the reasons which I'm assuming you're thinking of. I did a BA on lighting design course at Rose Bruford. I have, obviously, like I said earlier, I only do resident work for one particular theatre company, so I don't do it full time. But I work with someone called Ryan Stafford, great guy. He always gives me work for my Prodlex work. I pretty much do most of it when pre pandemic, and he does it full time, and he goes around the world and does it. He does all different types of areas. He does theatre, he does dance, he does musicals, and he is absolutely impeccable at it. I've never seen anyone so good, especially at such a young age. But he is one of the very few out of my course that have gone on to do lighting design. But for me, the benefits that I saw, or that I'm glad that I've used, is gaining experiences from different types of performance that you get there. If I didn't go to uni, I don't think I would have experienced different types of theatre as quickly as I did. That was also the contacts that I've made is probably the number one thing that has got me this far. Because it does open those avenues and those opportunities for you to meet certain professionals, practitioners that can give you their personal experience of how they go through shows and productions, and therefore that leads you on to having other opportunities. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And then that leads on to other stuff, as you know, because obviously you don't get a job without coming from another one. To be fair, for most 9 out of 10, I've do you want to come and do this? I know this guy. It's all about trust at the end of the day. But university has definitely helped me get to where I am now, just through those contacts. I think that's the most important thing for me. Because it allowed me to work when I was at a university. But whilst studying as well, I also also it's a bit off topic, but like the friends that you make at university, not just like every friend that I've made from uni, they're all my colleagues as well, and they also add on to the contacts that you've made unknowingly. You've made professional contacts, but your mates now work in the industry as well, so they'll give you work. But I'd say contacts is the number thing that I've benefited from going to university, because that's where I've ended up in that area of doing tech work, doing light technician work, not so much the design side, but like we said earlier, you'll start off doing one thing and you'll just end up doing another thing. It's how it naturally shifts you into where you should be.
I think it's one of those. I think it's, you do get those couple of people who come out and go, absolutely, yes, this is what I'm doing. I don't see myself doing anything else. But you touched on it there, that of what you kind of do at university and develop from that. And I've always said the best kind of designers that I've ever worked for have a ridiculously good understanding of what is going on, like behind and understands what's needed to make. Yes, they can have that vision, and the best line designers, they're the only people who kind of have that, can literally look at an empty stage and go, right, yes, bang. But then also have that understanding of all the intricacies that go into making what they see in their head happen. So understand that grander scheme of things, which I think is great at what you mentioned that you get at university, that it's not all just geared towards that one niche element that you do. You gain experience in lots of different areas of all the bits of it that ultimately make up what needs to happen to have that vision. I was going to say visionary, but I think that's not quite the right word, but that kind of element of doing that, of seeing that side of it as to where it goes. But it's always an interesting one, kind of listening to kind of how it goes. And I think it's when you then ultimately get asked the question of, do you need a degree to do your job? And it's always a weird one that you go, well, I think I answer it, well, you can, but you don't have to, but it can help. And I think it very much comes down to you yourself, of where you are at that point in time, I think. And how you feel that you need that kind of, of how you feel that pathway for you is into the industry. Because I think the pathway for everyone to get to where they go is very, very different.
I think the actual, you got the degree, but not once has anyone asked me, can I see your degree? And no one does. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper. But what matters is what you've learned over those 3 years, who you've met, the amount of work ethic you've put into all the jobs that you've been to, the relationships that you've made with certain people. It's all about those pints that you have with people in the pub, and this. It's all about it's not so much getting drunk or whatever, but it is about sitting down and having a rapport with the right people, and not because you're trying to kiss anyone's ass or anything like that, but because you really want this job. And if you bounce off those certain people, you can go far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it all comes down to, ultimately, it's just, you're just developing skills and adding more strings to your bow, and more kind of that. And yes, you find the bits that you kind of ultimately end up enjoying more than others, and that's just the way it goes. But you're always at some point, especially when you're starting out to that, you're going to say yes, and you very quickly learn, that's not the area for me. I don't want to work in that bit. And you figure out very quickly, not that you don't do the job, but you just kind of go, okay, well, I'm just going to kind of look more this way. And whether that's lighting, sound, video, more so than ever, because I think that's just becoming more and more. I think people are realizing the ultimate creative potential in video to kind of bring that alongside everything that's going on. And I think so you always kind of do that, and you get some people who go, yep, I'm just a stage manager from day dot. That's it. I think
you need to, another important thing is you need to have the understand, like you said, you need to work in every department, regardless of whether you enjoy it or not, to understand where everyone's coming from, i.e., when you do eventually you're on that tour, Cal, you're doing, you're pulling that stuff up, but you know that you can't pull that stuff up until the audio boys have pulled their stuff up or whatever. You need to know how how they work from A to B in order to know, because otherwise the stuff doesn't work. You need all those cogs need to work at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise you're stepping on each other's toes.
You don't have to know the ins and outs of every job, but at least knowing roughly what someone else is trying to do does help an awful lot.
So like, yeah, exactly. So if you're having a conversation with someone on stage, one of the stage boys, but they ask you, can I do this yet? And you need to be in your head being like, actually, you can't do that until the other department have done that. That is so important, because otherwise you're just backtracking. So
yeah, absolutely.
But it's such a niche way of working that, like you say, people, because they don't understand it, they don't really,
just the magical pixies, mate, that make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just loads of machinery behind doing it all.
Theatre pixies. Right then, man, we'll jump into kind of the last wrap-up cues and kind of bring this thing all together. So everyone gets asked the same questions. Let's see what we've got. So first one is, if you've got a dream show that you could be involved with, that you could work on, what would that be?
So, because like I said earlier, it's got to be theatre for me. It's got to be musical theatre. For whatever reason, I just love it. So it'd probably be LX number 1 on a tour of Hamilton. Just adding that tour element, because I've never done tour before.
So second question, what is your go-to post-show snack?
Well, I think it's one's got to be a pint in it. I mean, there's no getting around that.
It kind of goes without saying, to be honest.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, when you said snack, I was like, this is definitely a beer and
this is the
something
thing.
else.
Well, this is the thing. So I kind of phrase this a little bit differently, depending on who I'm chatting to, and I can chat to you and change it slightly into what it originally started out as. What's your go-to get-out snack? Like that's that one thing you've got in your pelly that when it's 3-4 in the morning, you need that little pick me up. What's that one thing you've always got?
I think I went through a stage of like carrying cashews with me, and like roasted cashews, just because they're dry, they're tasty, but they're like a quick snack. So I definitely say like either like dry roasted peanuts or something like that. But if it's got to be a drink, it's definitely got to be a Heineken. It's got to be that fresh, straight from the pub. I don't like mentioning pubs too much because I'll start crying. But that's what it'll be.
All you have to say is there's a reason there's a pub outside most stage doors around the country. Let's wrap this up. Last question, and then we can just chat on for however long we want to. But so final question of the podcast in that sense. What's the one thing that you know now that you wish you'd known when you were first starting out that would have made your life somewhat easier?
I think it'd be, as a title, be open-minded with your job description, and it comes along with what we've been speaking about already, of like don't bother fixating on what you like. Have an initial thought, but you're going to be doing many other things, so positions will get offered to you to expand your skill set, and let it happen. And they'll come at least when you expect it. You've had, I really want this coming to me, and then you start doing a job, and then something just happens for you, and then before you know it, you've got it, and you're leaving in 3 weeks or whatever, or you're doing this for whatever amount of time. And the main thing is just like, no matter what you do, make sure you're enjoying it, because what's the point otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great note for everyone, really. At the end of the day, enjoy what you do. Yeah, you've got
exactly. Yeah, you spend the majority of your life working, man. And if you do something that you love doing, then that's literally the entire battle.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've spent a lot of. I'm lucky I'm in a job now, which I'm quite grateful for. But up to this point, I've been doing a lot of jobs which have like just for the money. But you don't want to get up, and I'd much rather be up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning on a train all the way to wherever, or to get on a plane somewhere to go and work somewhere in the industry, than I would be getting up for a 9 to 5 in an office, which I don't enjoy.
Absolutely. Grand, man. I think it's a great little note to kind of wrap up and end the podcast on. It's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you, Val.
Yeah, it's been amazing, mate. Thank you very much for having me.
No worries at all, man.
Thank you for listening to the Stage Is Yours podcast. Want to know more? Then head over to all of our socials. You can find us at Stage Is Yours Pod, where you can catch a cheeky glimpse at some of our upcoming guests, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to make sure that you never miss an episode. This has been the Stage Is Yours podcast, talking all things theatre and events. Until next time.